Another interesting report, though, is the possibility that a much more moderate Republican candidate could be fielded to get enough Republican votes and potentially enough Democratic votes to become Speaker. And I know, like, obviously in an ideal world or in a better world, a Democrat would be Speaker as well. In a better world, enough Republicans would either vote for Democrat to become Speaker or just wouldn't show up to vote or vote present, in which in those two cases, the total number of representatives shrink, right? So like right now, if every member of the House of Representatives votes, you have 435, and a majority would be 218, right? One more than half. But if representatives don't show up, or they do show up but they vote present, basically like a neutral vote, then that number shrinks, that total shrinks to you have to subtract however many people don't show up or vote present or both. And that means the number needed for a majority shrinks too, from 218 to, again, one more than half. So it's possible that enough Republicans don't show up through attrition or show up but out of spite vote present, that if Democrats keep their stuff together and and don't succumb to attrition and continue to vote on party lines, it's possible that Hakeem Jeffries could become Speaker. But it's very unlikely, right? It's very unlikely. But what is more likely than that is that enough moderate Republicans in the House could find a candidate that would get enough votes from their caucus and also attract enough votes from the Democratic caucus. And one report, according to the Daily Caller, comes from Representative Don Bacon. He says if McCarthy's Speaker bid fails, Democrats might have to be part of the process, which is kind of funny to think about, because it's like, hey, maybe if we aren't hyper-partisan and we're not successfully hyper-partisan, maybe we Republicans will have to get Democrats involved, which is something that Democrats have to do all the time. The expectation, again, is always on Democrats to reach across the aisle and try to court as many Republican votes as possible. But that expectation is never put on Republicans. So it's interesting that Don Bacon is like, well, I guess if this isn't going to work, maybe we're going to have to get Democrats involved and see if they want to elect somebody. Maybe we have to offer somebody who could work on a bipartisan basis. And he didn't name names, but he hinted that it would be someone who is currently a sitting member of Congress, but would not be there in the next Congress, the 118th Congress, the one that's supposed to be gavelled in today. But first you need a speaker to do it. And so, according to most reports, the person he's most likely referring to is an outgoing Republican congressman named Fred Upton, who I wasn't too familiar with until I was doing research into this. And Fred Upton, by today's contemporary standards, is a relatively moderate, relatively sane Republican, which again means that he's still a less than ideal choice compared to virtually any Democrat, right? He's still on the Republican side, and Republicans have become increasingly radical, increasingly anti-democratic, but he is among the least of these, okay? So, for example, to give the devil his due, Fred Upton, on his way out the door during this past congressional cycle, he voted for the Respect for Marriage Act, which codified, same-sex marriage into law legislatively in case the Supreme Court decides to overturn the Obergefell decision, which they came to in 2015, which federalized protections for gay marriage. He voted for that legislation. He was one of a few to do it. In 2020 or 2021, he voted to impeach President Trump a second time. He broke ranks with Republicans to do it. So those are some examples of, many of us would consider those just bare minimum, examples of humanity, where you're willing to impeach a tyrant and you're willing to protect the rights of gay adults to marry one another. But as far as Republicans are concerned, those two sorts of votes are relatively rare. So I could see that happening before Jeffries manages to get enough votes to get a majority. So anyway, we'll have to see what happens from here, but it's certainly been very interesting. And again, the highlight of the day is the fact that Kevin McCarthy publicly embarrassed himself one more time. And he says he's going to be there for the next ballot and the next ballot and the next ballot. So The upshot is, for you and I, looks like there are going to be many more opportunities for Kevin McCarthy to humiliate himself for our viewing pleasure.